6 American service members from an Iowa Army Reserve unit are no longer with us, lost in an Iranian unmanned aerial strike on a tactical operations center in Kuwait. The Pentagon confirmed the location. The Pentagon confirmed the casualties. What the Pentagon has not confirmed is how that aerial platform found that building. On March 6, 2026, the Washington Post reported, sourced to 3 officials with direct knowledge of the intelligence, that Russia has been providing Iran with the precise locations of American warships, American aircraft, and American military installations across the Middle East since Operation Epic Fury began on February 28th. Not political support, not diplomatic statements, coordinates. And here is what makes that confirmation the most important unreported story of this conflict. The Trump administration did not deny it. The White House press secretary said it did not matter. The defense secretary said, on camera, that he was not concerned. The Kremlin declined to comment. Iran's foreign minister confirmed it on NBC News on a Sunday morning. Everyone acknowledged it. Nobody called it what it is. And the question this video is going to answer is why. To understand Russia's role in this conflict, you first have to understand what Iran lost in the opening hours of Operation Epic Fury, and why that loss made Russian intelligence not a supplement to Iran's targeting architecture, but a replacement for it. Iran did not enter this conflict unprepared. It entered with 3 surveillance layers designed specifically to locate American carriers in their supposed safe zones, shore-based radar networks along the southern coast. The Shahed Baghari, a converted container ship deploying Chinese-supplied wing-long platforms with 40-hour endurance, capable of tracking a carrier's position continuously across open ocean. And Mizar Vision, a Shanghai-based AI company that had been publicly posting satellite imagery of the USS Abraham Lincoln, its position in the Arabian Sea in the days before the operation began. CENTCOM engaged the Shahed Baghari within hours of the operation's opening phase. By March 5th, Admiral Brad Cooper confirmed more than 30 Iranian naval vessels had been neutralized or removed from service. Iran's coastal radar infrastructure was being systematically targeted. The surveillance architecture Iran spent 4 years assembling, the targeting chain designed to close the gap between a shore-based long-range munition and a moving carrier, had been substantially degraded. This is where the strategic picture changes. Because the moment Iran loses independent surveillance capacity, its munitions inventory becomes less effective, not because the systems are gone, but because the targeting chain that makes them precise is broken. A long-range munition without accurate coordinates is not a precision instrument. It is an expensive guess. And the only external actor with a satellite infrastructure, the signal's intelligence reach, and an established channel to Tehran capable of filling that gap is Russia. Glenn Howard, president of the Jamestown Foundation, stated it directly to RFE-RL on March 6th. Because of heavy equipment losses in Ukraine, Moscow currently faces its own hardware shortages. It cannot transfer radar systems or aircraft to Iran. That means the most immediate and valuable asset Moscow can offer right now is timely, actionable intelligence. Timely and actionable. Those are the operational specifications for what turns an Iranian long-range ballistic system from a directional threat into a precise targeting solution. But that is not the real pressure point. The real pressure point is what Russia gets in return, and it has nothing to do with Iran. Every American SM-6 interceptor expended defending a base in Qatar from an Iranian aerial platform is one that is not in the logistics pipeline to Kiev. Every Tomahawk cruise munition deployed in the opening days of Operation Epic Fury is one that is not available for a NATO contingency. CSIS confirmed on March 5th that a panelist stated explicitly, on the record, that current U.S. procurement numbers for SM-3 interceptors and Tomahawks are nowhere near sufficient, given the consumption rate of the conflict's first week. The defense industrial constraint is real. It runs years, not months. Russia is not trying to defeat the United States in the Middle East. It is trying to exhaust the United States in the Middle East while the Ukraine conflict continues. The intelligence sharing costs Moscow almost nothing. The strategic return is disproportionate to that cost, and Washington has chosen to absorb it quietly rather than confront it publicly, for reasons that are entirely understandable and entirely insufficient. Here is where the analysis becomes more complex. The Korean War provides the closest structural parallel. When American forces entered Korea in June 1950, Soviet MiG-15 pilots were flying under Chinese markings within months. Soviet radar operators were tracking American formations. Soviet intelligence was flowing into the North Korean command structure. The Eisenhower administration knew. It chose not to escalate by publicly confronting Soviet participation because the alternative, formal acknowledgement, carried escalation risks that outweighed the tactical costs of managing the situation quietly. That management decision shaped the entire political framework of the Korean War. It created a template in which a major power could participate indirectly, below the threshold that triggers formal escalation, while both sides maintained the appearance of non-involvement because both sides needed that appearance to prevent something worse. The Trump administration is operating from the same template in 2026. The language is nearly identical. Minimize, continue. Do not name what is happening. The White House press secretary said Russia's intelligence sharing did not matter because the U.S. military was significantly degrading the Iranian regime, its capabilities, regardless. Defense Secretary Hegseth said on 60 Minutes that his commanders factor all of this and mitigate as needed. The Korean template was available in 1950 because the information environment allowed it. A classified intelligence assessment stayed classified. What is different now is that Abbas Araghchi confirmed Russian assistance on NBC News in a live broadcast interview. The Kremlin's non-denial was reported globally within hours. The template that requires both sides to maintain the appearance of non-involvement is being applied in an environment where that appearance is publicly visible to every government, every defense ministry, and every adversary planning staff watching this conflict. What most coverage misses entirely is this. There is a physical pressure point embedded in the geography of this conflict that has received almost no analytical attention. The Bushehr atomic energy facility, Iran's only operational commercial reactor, is currently being operated by Rosatom, the Russian state atomic energy corporation. When Operation Epic Fury launched on February 28th, Rosatom evacuated nearly 100 staff from Iran. According to CSIS analysis published March 1st, personnel, primarily Russian nationals, remain on site at Bushehr to keep the facility running. Russian nationals are physically present inside the active operational zone. They are maintaining a facility that American and Israeli forces have surrounded with aerial operations across southern Iran. An operation that results in Russian casualties at Bushehr, accidental, through proximity, through a targeting error in a complex electromagnetic environment, does not produce a diplomatic complaint. It produces a structural rupture in the managed indirect participation framework that both Washington and Moscow have been maintaining since March 6th. There is no diplomatic language available for that scenario. The Korean template does not cover it. Putin's publicly stated unwavering support for the new Iranian supreme leader, delivered in a formal message on March 9th, becomes operationally significant in a completely different register the moment a Russian technician falls in an aerial operation on Iranian soil. That is not a theoretical risk. That is a structural pressure point with a confirmed physical location. Now consider what China is doing with all of this. Beijing publicly opposed any external targeting of Iran's new supreme leader on March 9th. It framed the objection as sovereignty protection. That framing is not humanitarian, it is doctrinal. The same sovereignty argument applies to Taiwan, to Hong Kong, to any future scenario in which external force is used to remove Chinese leadership. China is constructing the normative architecture of a counter-framework during this conflict, using Iran as the test case, building the legal and diplomatic language it intends to cite when its own strategic interests require identical protection. China is also observing the Russian intelligence integration with Iranian targeting chains under live operational conditions and feeding those observations directly into its own planning. Not for Iran scenarios, for scenarios that matter far more to Beijing than this one. 3 scenarios, no predictions, conditions only. Low probability. Russia halts intelligence sharing in response to American diplomatic pressure. Pressure the administration has publicly refused to apply. Iran's new supreme leader authorizes back-channel engagement within 30 days of installation, overriding IRGC hardline pressure while he has personally lost his father, his mother, his wife, and members of his family in the operations that initiated this conflict. Congress does not force a war powers vote before that engagement produces a framework. Every one of those conditions is currently moving in the wrong direction. Medium probability, prolonged operational plateau. Iranian strike tempo remains suppressed. The Hudson Institute identified fewer than 30 launches per day as the threshold indicating meaningful degradation. But Russian intelligence compensates for degraded Iranian surveillance sufficiently that Iran can concentrate remaining launcher capacity against higher value targets, rather than dispersing it randomly. The Strait of Hormuz remains contested but not fully closed. G7 emergency reserve releases stabilize oil below $100. No resolution, no ground incursion. Attrition measured in months, high probability path of least resistance. The Bushehr pressure point is triggered, not through intent, through the operational density of a conflict in which American and Israeli aircraft are conducting aerial operations across southern Iran, while Russian nationals remain on site at a reactor in Bushehr province. The managed indirect participation framework collapses. The conflict that the White House has consistently framed as a 4 to 6 week regional operation becomes something that existing diplomatic channels, existing legal frameworks, and existing alliance structures were not designed to manage. Watch 3 indicators that will tell you which path this is taking. Watch whether the Trump administration moves from minimizing Russian intelligence sharing to formally confronting it. Every White House briefing that continues to describe the situation as manageable is a data point. The absence of a formal response is itself a strategic signal about where Washington's escalation tolerance is currently set. Watch the Bushehr facility. Commercial satellite imagery is publicly available. Whether Rosatom personnel remain on site, whether the reactor continues operating, whether additional evacuations are ordered, that tells you more about Russian risk tolerance in this conflict than any official statement from the Kremlin. And watch whether Iranian operational accuracy improves in the conflict's second and third weeks despite the confirmed degradation of Iranian surveillance infrastructure. If operations become demonstrably more precise while Iran's own targeting architecture remains compromised, the Russian intelligence contribution is not supplementing Iranian capability. It is replacing it. And that changes the entire calculus of what Operation Epic Fury's suppression campaign has actually achieved. Russia is not at war with the United States. 6 American service members from Iowa are no longer with us. Iranian aerial platforms found a building they should not have been able to locate. The Washington Post reported why on March 6th. Iran's foreign minister confirmed it on March 8th. The Kremlin declined to deny it. The gap between what is officially true and what is operationally true is the most important unexamined space in this conflict. It does not close by itself. It closes when someone decides to close it, in Washington, or in Moscow, or at a facility in Bushehr province, where Russian technicians are still working the night shift. That decision has not yet been made.